Hey folks, Captain Jim coming to you with another music video. This one's a little different today. Instead of playing a song, I'm testing out a new piece of gear. This is the Aeroband Guitar. It's different from the other guitars that I own. And I visited with the folks at Aeroband to ask a few questions about it. And they sent this out to me to test out. So for full disclosure, I did not pay for this guitar, but Aeroband has not in any way paid me for anything I'm going to say in this video, and they are not telling me what to say in it. And first and foremost is I'm not getting any younger. My grip strength is down a little bit, and I have some arthritis in my hands, so I wanted to know how this guitar would be for somebody who doesn't have the grip strength that they used to have. And if it's easier on the fingers for playing. And I wanted to know how the guitar would be for doing any recording. So, with that in mind, here's a little discussion about the Aeroband guitar. And it is different from any other guitar that I've owned. And for a little background on this, I'm in my 70s. I started playing guitar when I was 11 years old, so I've been playing guitar for over 60 years. I quit college first time around to go on the road with a band. So at different times in my life, I've made my living playing guitar and singing, and it's always been a passion for me. And so when I saw this guitar, I thought, well, I'd like to get my hands on it, see what it really is all about. If you've seen any of the videos, and there are plenty of videos out there on YouTube about the Aeroband guitar, it seems like most guitar players are not crazy about it. And some think it's a toy, some think it's along the lines of Guitar Hero, and I'm going to give you my honest opinions, and you can take that for what it's worth. I would call this guitar a digital guitar. The strings are not really strings. What you see on the fretboard is silicone, so not steel or nylon strings. There are sensors underneath the fretboard that determine where your fingers are, and that's how the sound is produced. So it doesn't sound exactly like an electric guitar, and certainly not like an acoustic guitar. So let's just turn it on and you can see what I'm talking about. That's how you know the guitar has turned itself on. It has a speaker built into it right down here. And the sounds that you're hearing are the sounds of the speaker in the room. I haven't put a separate mic on the guitar or anything. Just wanted to get a feel for what this guitar is all about. Does it play like a guitar? Well, yeah, it does. With some understanding of what's happening here. You have strings down on this part. They're actual steel type guitar strings. But what's happening here does not correlate exactly with what's happening up here on the neck. I think some of the things that traditional guitar players don't like about it is you can't bend these strings. As you do slides, you get more of a, I'm going to call it a digital sound out of it. You have a variety of guitar sounds out of it, everything from several different acoustics, a couple of different electrics, nylon, and banjo. I'm not a banjo player by any stretch. I can tell you some banjo jokes, but I'll leave that out here. And piano sound and a harpsichord. And if you want to use it with MIDI, and I've asked a friend of mine, Mark, a longtime friend and music partner of mine, I've asked him to explore some of the MIDI aspects of this guitar, because it is a MIDI controller as well too. So we'll take a minute here and just explore some of the guitar sounds on it. Okay, a typical acoustic guitar. A little more of a crisper electric sound on it. That would be definitely an electric guitar sound. More electric. And there's the nylon string. So yeah, it kind of sounds like a nylon string guitar. Another thing that some guitar players don't like about this is you can't just mute strings by lifting or touching your palm onto the strings. There's a little bar down here that's a mute bar. So if you hit a note on this, it has pretty good sustain to it. And if you're using it on MIDI with a keyboard type sound for it, it will hold that sound until you press the mute on here. Let's make a switch here. Okay. And does it sound like a piano? Yeah, it does. Another of the sounds on here is bass guitar. And does it sound like a bass? It kind of sounds like a MIDI type bass. So, and there's that banjo sound. Yeah, it's more than enough of that. And then the harpsichord sound. So you got a lot of options built right into the guitar as far as the sound goes. You can then choose to plug it into MIDI using this as a MIDI controller, plug it into your digital audio workstation, and trigger sounds from any instruments. I'm going to cut to my buddy Mark, and I lent him the guitar and said, "Hey Mark, have at it. No coaching or anything on my part, just play with it, see what you think about it." So he had it for a week or so, and here's some of what he had to say.
Okay, I'm playing around with this Aero guitar, having a lot of fun. I'm using the piano setting. I'm finding that this bar here is like taking the sustain pedal off the piano, but the default is that the sustain is on. I'm actually running through my pedal board, but a pretty clean setting. I've got some reverb and a little bit of delay on it, but otherwise it's clean. I tried running the octave pedal to drop it, and it doesn't work very well like that, so pretty clean. But I did tune this guitar down in octaves, which lowers the piano, so it's down to about here. Okay. And what I've learned is that if I'm playing this, I want to play it like a piano, which I'm striking a piano, so it's... So I think with a little bit of practice, particularly with a focus on playing cleanly, also I think a finger picking technique is probably the best if you're really trying to work on a piano type sound. Give you a little bit example of what I've been able to do with this. I think you can actually get a pretty nice sound with this. I'm going to try something else. Here's my main chord. It's a G minor 7th played up on the 10th fret. I've got to be careful because, again, it's going to continue to ring. I'm still in the piano mode here. And if I switch to another chord, any string I bump is going to sound. So occasionally you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this A string kick in even when I don't want it to be there. So what I'm trying to do is just keep my fingering fingers on the frets until I'm ready to move to them, and so I don't pick up that stray sound. But if I do it right, it can sound as something like this. Jim, I know how much you love a good banjo, so I'm going to try to do some stuff. Key thing I've learned with banjos is helps to finger pick if you can. Also, you got to move really precisely. Otherwise, you get that sound if you slide across the fret. And probably doesn't fit what you're trying to play, but it's kind of... Here we are, we're back talking about this Aeroband guitar. The last couple of days I've been exploring what you can do vis-a-vis MIDI and this particular instrument. It's pretty simple. All it took to connect this into the DAW was a simple USB cord, USB-C, plug one end into the guitar, plug the other end into, in this case, MacBook running Logic Pro. And it immediately recognized it, had to adjust some of the settings in terms to make sure that it was recording MIDI with the Aeroband as the trigger for it. There's interesting things. First off, the volume on the guitar has no effect over the volume that's going to be recorded. This is just simply triggering things. MIDI's going to play MIDI, so if you've got it set for a saxophone, and there's an example of that, it's going to sound and play it as a saxophone, and it will inherit, your DAW will inherit, or the guitar, will inherit the characteristics of the instrument you're playing. So for example, if I went up too high on the fretboard, higher than a note that the saxophone could play, it would lower that an octave. Same way if I went down too low on the fretboard, the sax recording would cut off and it would shift an octave up. So some real interesting things along those lines. So there were a couple of really interesting and kind of fun things using this guitar as a MIDI trigger. If you tune your instrument down a fret or two, or a note or two, and then you use it to trigger a softer instrument via MIDI, that tuning is going to shift. So if I'm playing now I'm down 2 steps, so I'm down, this is a D, it's going to play a D when I record it on the softer instrument. So that's good to know. And then, as we've discussed before, it's going to act as if it's the type of instrument that it really is. So if you're playing a B3 organ setting, for example, when you play the note, it's the same as if you struck that key on a real Hammond B3. It's going to hold that note until you actually take your finger off the fret, just as you would, release your finger off the key. And in some cases, if you've played an open string, it's just going to keep playing that note, even though you might not hear it on the Aeroband guitar. You'll actually have to go over and touch the mute bar that sits on top of the bridge to kill the note in the DAW and move on to something else. So that can work as an advantage if you wanted to just hold a bass note or something like that, but you have to remember to kill that if you're trying to move on to a different chord or something like that. I recorded some strings just in a simple kind of in the key of D. When I did that, I just played a D chord, and then I raised that to the E minor, F sharp minor up to the G, right? And then I just kept that open D string going the whole time. So when it recorded as a string quartet, you can hear that low D going the whole time while these other notes and things raise up. So that was really a fun thing to do. And again, it was a nice way that this guitar picks up the characteristics of what you're trying to record as using MIDI. I think there's a lot of things you do. I goofed up a note on trying to do a sax thing, and I could go into the MIDI and just erase that note, and it's just gone like that. So there's a lot of neat things you can do. People that are used to using MIDI will probably, and if they play guitar, they'll probably find this a really easy instrument to kind of move over and take advantage of. But by and large, it's a really fun instrument. It's pretty easy to use. The setup wasn't too bad. And once you've got it in there, you can just keep adding track after track after track and just keep, duplicating those MIDI settings. So fun to use, interesting. And if you turn up the volume while you're recording MIDI, you can actually play along with yourself if you like. So have some fun with it. It's a nice little instrument. It's a really sophisticated thing in a lot of ways. And I'm sure some new releases of the software will add even more settings and more fun to it. Take care. Have fun.
Another interesting feature of the guitar is that you can move up by half steps as far as the tuning, or you can do alternate tunings on it. You can do a drop D. Using the app that comes with it, you can set it for taro patch or whatever you might like for a guitar, or for the tuning on a guitar. So it's pretty unlimited with that. But if you want to move up one half step, it'll make that sound there, and you're still playing down in what I call the cowboy chords. This is where the money is, down here in this part. And so you're not actually putting a capo on it, but by moving this button up, you can capo up or down with that. So you have many options as far as the sounds, the tones, and what you can get out of it. You don't actually put a capo on this. I had somebody ask me about that. Well, how do you put a capo on it? You don't. You use these buttons to adjust that. It also has drum tracks built into it. I'm not a big one for that, but they're in there if you want to have that to jam along with. Now, the big question for me was, how is this for a guy with some arthritis in his hands that can't press as hard and can't play as fast as he used to? And yeah, I think it does a pretty good job for that. There is no pressure as far as pressing down on the strings. I mean, it's easy to play a bar chord on this. You don't have to press hard on it. So for people who are just learning guitar and they're having an issue playing a bar chord, or for people who have arthritis in their hands and they're having some difficulty with that, yeah, this would probably work for that. Now, kind of my final wrap up here, is this going to take the place of a regular guitar? And my honest evaluation of that is no. No, there are things that you can do on a regular guitar that you can't do on this. First of all, that bending of strings. I'm an old rock and roller, and that's a big part of it for me. Would I use this guitar? Absolutely. I think it makes an interesting companion guitar, especially for recording. I'm not great on a keyboard, but if I want to plug this in to a DAW and get keyboard sounds or horn sounds or strings like violins, yeah, this works really well for that. Would I play out with it? Maybe for the novelty of it, but as far as it replacing one of my regular guitars, no, I don't see that happening. Would it be good for someone new just learning guitar? Can you translate what's happening up here with the fingerboard from this to a regular guitar? Well, you have to build in some muscle memory so that you can learn chord shapes when you're first learning guitar. And I think one of the things that really stops a lot of young players or first-time players is the fact that it hurts your fingertips when you're first learning to play. I haven't played for so many years. I've got good calluses on my fingertips. But this is definitely easier than everything except probably the finest setup on an electric guitar. That might be equivalent. The neck is different. My guitar playing, I play a lot of acoustic, I play some electric, and mine have all been what I would call standard type guitars, 25.5-inch scale length, 1 3/4 or 1 11/16 nut width. And this is not that. The fretboard on this to me feels more like a classical guitar. It feels very flat, and the width is just a little bit wider than a 1 3/4-inch nut width. And I'll put some specs up here for measurements that I've taken with it to get a feel for that. So if you're used to playing a flat fretboard guitar, yeah, this is going to be a real easy transition. If you're used to having a radius on a guitar like most electrics and most acoustics have, it does take a little bit of getting used to. And as far as other guitar players that you might have seen videos on where, oh no, this thing is a toy, it's a device. It serves a function. So I hope I'm explaining that well, in that it's not going to replace my favorite acoustic guitar or my favorite electric guitar, but I think it has some worthwhile attributes to make it an additional guitar. And if you're just learning and you want to play on this, well, going into the app, you can set functions within the app for pressing 1 or 2 strings at a time that will play a chord. So it's a little bit like, say I'm old enough to remember the days of chord organs where you pressed one note on the organ and it played a chord for you. And I think some of the later model Casio keyboards from 10 years ago did something similar like that. But you can set that up. You could be playing this thing within an hour of opening the box, and actually, as long as you set things up with the app so that it's got the chord structure that you want, you could be playing songs in an hour or so with it. Is it going to replace daily practice and learning the fretboard so you know where the notes are, you know where to put your fingers for the different chords and that? No, that's where I think some people consider it more toy-like. And so it does that, but it does a lot more than that too. So in terms of playing guitar with it, yeah. Oh, one other thing that I'm not crazy about on this guitar, and because I'm being very frank about it, there is no nut down here. When I spoke earlier of the nut width, I measured it for the width of the neck right up there. But as I'm moving up and down the neck, my hand starts to feel where a nut is on my other guitars, and I don't have to look down at where I'm playing. And I have found from time to time that my hand slides off the end down here. And so I think I'm playing an E chord, and I wind up with that because my fingers have slid down there a little. So can it play like a regular guitar? Yeah, it sure can. If you play sloppy, and as I said, I'm an old rock and roller, so I do tend to play sloppy sometimes. If your finger isn't right on the fret where it needs to be, you might get a little warble sound in there. That's technique. You can tighten up your technique and learn how to utilize this guitar. But yeah, it plays. Here's So yeah, it plays, and the notes come out where your fingers are. Would I buy one? Yeah, I would. But I would use it as a, like I said before, as a companion guitar, or for somebody that isn't sure if they're going to stay with guitar before you invest in a big dollar guitar. This might be a nice introduction for that too. But it's more than a toy. It's not exactly the same. It is easier on the hands for us old guys with arthritis, or people new to guitar playing, just learning to build up the calluses. So the Aeroband Guitar, check it out. Lots of other videos online. You can get it from Amazon or direct from Aeroband. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it.